just any fruit, it is a ripe fruit, Galitham Palam. And who drops this fruit in our lap for us to consume? It is Shukar or Sukacharya or Sukha Brahmam. Sukha Brahmam is the son of Veda Vyasa, and he is known, and Sukha in Sanskrit also means parrot. Some of the depictions of Sukha show him as with a parrot head, and the name could be because he parroted, like a parrot repeats what is being told. Veda Vyasa told the Bhagavatham to him, and he, like a parrot, repeated it to King Parikshit. We'll see about that a bit later. And he gave us to us in the form of a nectar, Amrit, and to make it easy for us, he didn't even give it as a fruit. He gave it as an essence, Dravam, which is like a semi-liquid, so that when we take it, we swallow it easily, we imbibe it easily. You don't even have to chew. Fruit you have to chew, but the essence, you just drink. It is so easy to take in. And how does the Bhakta need to take in Bhagavatam? You have to take it rasam alayam. A in Sanskrit means until, and layam means being engrossed in it. So until you are fully imbibed, until you are fully engrossed, you have embraced the God presence, you have to take it until then. Keep going back over it again and again. Rasam alayam. So how did the Bhagavatam came to be narrated about? So there is a place called Naimisaranyam in current day Uttar Pradesh. So it's the kind of place where all the holy men, the sages, the rishis meet, like some kind of conference center or whatever. So there was a leader of the rishis called Shaunaka. So he collected all of the rishis to do a yajna for 1,000 years. And this was right at the start of Kali. And at that time, Sudha Pauranigar, he's known as Sudha, and he comes in. He is like a more elder rishi. And all the rishis gather around him and say to Sudha, this is the start of Kali Yuga. Everything is degrading. Morals are degrading. It is a time when things are not quite black and white. There is so much confusion, chaos, and we are completely lost. How can we save ourselves? And Sudha Pauranigar said, Bhagavatam is the light that is going to illuminate the darkness in you. And this is going to be the savior for all of you. And then he recited the Bhagavatam to them. And he essentially told them, look, Lord Vishnu is the path, and he is also the destination. Everything you do belongs to him, and Bhagavatam is going to explain to you how to engage with the Lord. Vasudeva Paraveda, Vasudeva Paramakaha, Vasudeva Parayoga, Vasudeva Paraha Kriyaha, Vasudeva Param Jnanam, Vasudeva Param Tapaha, Vasudeva Paro Dharmo, Vasudeva Paragatihi. Everything you do, all the austerities, all the knowledge you process, all the sacrifices you do, your yoga, tapas, everything belongs to Lord Vishnu. And he, Paragatihi, he is your destination and your salvation. And then he told the story of how Bhagavatam came to be recited. The first part is, it was not recited straight away by Sukha Brahmam to King Parikshit. It was first recited by Veda Vyasa. And how did he do that? You would find some similarities between the epics. So what is the similarity is about the narration is with Mahabharata. That starts in the same way. Naimisaranyam, the sages gather, and then they ask sage Vaishampayana, who has returned from a yagam done by King Janamejaya, and he then tells them, I heard this glorious story called Mahabharata. And he recites the whole Mahabharata. That's why in Vishnu Sahasranamam you come across this verse, Vaishampayana Uvacha, which means Vaishampayana said. So it was not actually Veda Vyasa who recites it. He recites it, and Vaishampayana hears it elsewhere, and he comes and tells. And same thing here. Now, the starting of Bhagavatam is sage Narada meets Veda Vyasa along the river Ganges. And Veda Vyasa looks very troubled, for someone who has achieved a lot, who has done a lot. Veda Vyasa is credited with dividing the 4 Vedas into Rig, Yajur, Sama, and Atharvana Veda. He gave Rig Veda to his disciple Paila, Yajur Veda to Vaishampayana, Sama Veda to Jaimini, and Atharvanaveda to Sumanta, his disciple. So he did such a big task. He wrote Mahabharata, which is the longest epic poem in the world, 125,000 verses. He wrote all the 17 Puranas, or at least they are attributed to him, and still he looked very troubled. Narada said, "Why do you look troubled?" And he said, "You know what? I know why you are troubled. You started Mahabharata, you wanted to write about Krishna, but then you went all over the place and you dropped him straight into the middle of the action. No one knows exactly. Krishna's life starts there like in middle age. But he said, you know what, for people to engage with the philosophy, they need to know what it is about. They need to know the Lord. They need to know all the avatars. They need to kind of enjoy the Lord like one of their own. You should write about Krishna's life starting from his birth. So when was he born? How was he born? What were his adventures? What were all his cheshtidams, as we call? What was his leela as a child? You don't find any other god having a childhood explained so much in so much vatsalyam as Krishna did in Bhagavatham. So you have to write it. People engage with the god, and then they will engage with his philosophies. And so Vedavyasa first composed the Bhagavatam. He explained it to his son Sukha Brahmam. Sukha Brahmam is known as Sukha Brahmam because he realized Brahmam in himself and in others. That's why he is known as Sukha Brahmam. And his full name, if you want to know, is Sukha Brahmam Goswami. After this was done, we now move on to, I'm going to give you snapshots of Bhagavatam. Usually it is recited as a saptaham. Sapta means 7 and aham means days. Usually the traditional way is to recite it over 7 days. However, I've got just about 45 minutes, so I'm just going to give you the essence, the snapshots, the most important bits. So the first part is the birth of King Parikshit. King Parikshit was Abhimanyu's son. Abhimanyu, as you know, was Arjuna's son. So once Abhimanyu had, his wife was Uttara, and she had conceived. Abhimanyu died in battle in Kurukshetra. At the end of Kurukshetra, all of the Kauravas are defeated and vanquished. But you should remember that none of the Pandavas were left except for just 7 people. So it was a complete destruction of the whole Kshatriya race. So all the destruction happened. Yudhishthira did the Rajasuya Yaga. Krishna, who was with him, said, okay, now time for me to go back to Mathura. And at this time, Abhimanyu's wife, Uttara, came running to Krishna, and she said, Pahi Pahi Mahayogin, Deva Deva Jagatpate, Na Anyam Tvad Abhayam Pashye, Yatra Mrityuhu Parasparam. Pahi Pahi Mahayogin. Pahi means save in Sanskrit. Save me, Mahayogin. You are the Lord of all the yogas. As Gita says, he's the Yogeshwara. And so Krishna said, what has happened? What is bothering you? Why do you talk about death? She says, Mrityu is very near me. Now Drona's son Ashwatthama, after killing all of the Pandavas in the night, has released an astra called Apandava Astra, which means this will kill all of the Pandava clan. And so the Astras, Uttara is now pregnant with Parikshit. And so Krishna, to protect the Pandavas from the Astra, released a Sudarshana Chakra which went around them and protected them. But how to protect the fetus? So Krishna actually got into Uttara's Garbha, and he took his mace, he revolved it, and he went round and round the fetus, the child, the unborn child, and protected it. And Parikshit is known as Parikshit because Pari means round and Ikshit means see. So the child apparently was seeing all around him to see what is this divine presence that is protecting me. And Krishna protected him, and Parikshit was born unharmed, and then he grew up to be a very just ruler, very kind, merciful, and a just ruler. So he ruled for... 5 minutes. Okay, we'll stop just for a few minutes now. So Krishna has saved Parikshit. And now Kunti, his grandmother or great-grandmother, actually had a very strange wish. She came and thanked Krishna and said, Krishna, please keep sending more misery and more trouble our way. This was a fairly odd request from Kunti. And Krishna was puzzled. Why do you ask for such a boon. And she said, you see, the more trouble we ask, the more we pray to you, and you come and save us, and we experience your presence, and we are able to see you more. So she said, Kunti said, keep sending more misery my way. Now I'm sure we are not going to make such a prayer. So now moving on to Parikshit, he grew up, he learned all the Vedas, all the ways to rule as a king. He was a very just and merciful king. Then one day fate intervened. He went deep into the forest on the middle of the day. As you know, a forest is very hot and humid, and he went for a hunt, and he didn't take any water or food with him. By midday, he was very thirsty, very hungry. His senses were getting the better of him. And luckily for him, or unluckily for him, he saw a sage, a rishi's hermit in the forest. And this rishi was called Samika. So he went into the rishi's hut thinking there is going to be something that the rishi can offer, or at least just water, even if not food. And as his bad luck would have it, he went in. The rishi was in a state of pure meditation. He had withdrawn all his senses. He knew nothing of what was going on. He didn't realize the king had come into his into his hut, and he was totally one with the Lord. And Parikshit felt offended. So he was a king coming into the rishi's hermit. He doesn't see a greeting. He doesn't see the rishi offering him anything, not even water. Nothing was to be found. And he got very irate. And what he did is, he thought the rishi is insulting him. And so what he did is, he took his bow, and there was a dead snake lying inside that hut. So he took the snake and he put it around the rishi's neck as a garland, as an insult. And he went away. Now some of the rishi's son's friends ran and told to the rishi's son, who was playing, to say that the king came to your father's house. He has insulted him by putting a dead snake around his shoulder. The rishi's son was called Shringi. Now Shringi himself was a person of great power, and he was very offended and became quite angry himself. And he said, what, this king doesn't know how to treat a person of, who is supposed to be venerated. And he cursed Parikshit and said, in 7 days from now, King Parikshit will be bitten by the snake called Takshaka, and he will die. Now, the king went back to the palace, and he felt quite bad. He said, maybe there was a reason the rishi didn't get up. Maybe there was a reason he didn't greet me or offer me food. I shouldn't have insulted an elder person like this. And the news came to him, and everyone told him that, look, the rishi's son has cursed you like this. On the 7th day from now, you're going to die. And in the meantime, in the rishi's hut, the sun came, and the rishi by the time woke up and he saw the snake. He just threw it aside, and then he learned what his son had done, and he actually berated the son, saying, what have you done? A good ruler is like an embodiment of Lord Vishnu himself. But you know what? You are lucky that the king will not be angry, because he is a devotee of Lord Vishnu. People, devotees of Lord Vishnu, are able to take any kind of insult and not feel angry or act in anger. So you are protected from the king's wrath. And now King Parikshit did something that you wouldn't find anything in any other country or culture. One of the things from my talk is, I want the children to know what is unique about Bharat, our culture, and what it is about Hinduism that sets it apart. If it had been any other, in every country, treason, acts against the king are the worst crime, and you will be punished in the most gruesome way. You'll be put to death in the most gruesome way. Parikshit didn't do that. As soon as he heard about it, he knew he only had 7 days to live. This is a very important point. What he did is, he called his son Janamejaya, anointed him straight away, and said, now I give up, my position as a king. My son will take over. It's not like going on and on. I'll seek one more term, not like that. Renunciation is a very important principle. You will come time and again in our scriptures. He renounced his kingdom. He went to the banks of the river Ganges. He laid the darba grass, tips facing eastward, and he faced northwards and sat in penance and said, from this moment on, I'm going to fast right up until the time the snake comes. He didn't kind of worry about his life. He didn't worry about his kingdom. If it was me and I had 7 days, I would be rushing around to the lawyer's office, drawing up a will, tying up my financial affairs, whatever. And, being the king, he had extensive resources. He could have indulged in sensual pressure of every sort. But then what he sought was actually the truth. All the sages came along, Vishwamitra, Vasishta, Atreya, Chaitanya, Chavana, everyone came there to witness this great act of the king. And then Sukha Brahmam makes an entry here. Sukha Brahmam is not the most senior sage. He was just 16 years of age. But then his knowledge was such, his effulgence was such, when he came in, all the sages parted apart and let him close to the king. The king saw him. He was actually in quite a tatty form. He was like an avaduta, as they call it. And he fell right at the feet of Sukha Brahmam. And then he said these words, Yat Shrotavayam Atho Japyam, Yat Kartavyam Nirbhihi Prabho, Smartavyam Bhajaniyam Va, Bruhi Yadva Viparyayam. Very remarkable words. For someone facing death in just 7 days, he doesn't ask the sage to somehow counteract this curse, to somehow give him life, somehow make the snake go away. He said, Sukha Brahmam, O Guru, let me know what a man should hear, what a man should chant, remember, worship, what should he do, and tell me also what one should not do. So even at this point, he is a seeker of truth. That is one of the most important things you need to remember, our scriptures and our land. People are all, one of the constant themes is seeking truth in one form. Of course, one person's truth may not be another person's, but there was this constant search there. That's why people from all over come to India seeking some kind of, they may or may not find it. The faith they have in India and in our land is that they know that ours is a land over generation has been searching for truth. And everything throughout the scriptures you will find is everything is in the form of question and answers. In Vishnu Sahasranamam, the whole thing starts with Yudhishthira's questions. Kimekam Daivatam Loke, Kim Vapyekam Parayanam, Stuvantam Kam Archantaha, Prapnayur Manava Subham, Ko Dharma Sarva Dharmanam Bhavata Paramo Mataha, Kim Japan Muchyate Jantur Janma Samsara Bandhanate. Who is the one deity I should worship? What is the dharma that is superior to all the dharmas? And what is the chant that will free even the smallest creature, the jantur, from this samsara bandham, from this endless cycle of birth and death? And every sage needs a disciple to bring out the best teaching in him. In Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna served as the disciple for Krishna and he brought forth the Bhagavad Gita, and hence the sloka Sarvopanishado Gavo, Dokta Gopala Nandanaha, Patho Vatsaha, Sudhir Bhokta Duktam Gitamritam Vahat. So Sarvopanishado Gavaha, all the Upanishads are like the cows. And who better to milk them than the cowherd Gopala? And cows essentially produce more milk in the presence of the calf, and Arjuna acts as the calf, and Krishna milks the Upanishads and gives us Bhagavad Gita. Now, after Parikshit asked this question, Sukha Brahmam then took him through all of the avatars of Lord Vishnu. It's not just the Dasavatar. There are about 22 avatars mentioned in Bhagavatam. He took them through all of that. And then we come across a whole panoply of characters. We come across Gajendra in Gajendra Moksham, Jarabarada, Ajamilan, Dhruva, Prahalada, Uddhava. So there are many characters. They even, there is even mention of Shiva and Vrikashura, Indra and Vritrashura, the battle between them. So there are many characters illustrating many different points and philosophies and arguments and everything. And actually, the whole life of Krishna is just confined to one skandam, or the big section as they call it, and that is in the Dasama skandam or the 10th skandam. And he also, and through all of this, he explains to them what are the forms of bhakti, how to engage with the Lord, the different forms of yoga, social order, duties of a grahastha, everything. That all forms part of Bhagavatam. So I'll just give you just a few snapshots now. The most important avatar there is Nrsimha Avataram and Prahalada Charitra. Okay, and Prahalada, as you know, is the son of Hiranyakashipu, and he learnt about the Lord even when he was in his mother's uterus, and he went to school, and he was taught by Sukracharya's two sons. And he came home, and Hiranyakashipu asked him, "What did you learn in school today?" And then he repeated this: Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnoho, Smaranam Padasevanam, Archanam Vandanam Dasyam, Sakyam Atmanivedam, Iti Pumsharpita Vishnu, Bhakshishet Nava Lakshana, Kriyeta Bhagavati, Adda Tanmaye Aditam Uttamam. I learned about the most important forms of education today, which is the 9 forms of bhakti. This is a very important part that Sukha told Parikshit. And he said, what are the 9 forms of bhakti? First is Shravanam, hearing, hear the Lord's name, hear the scriptures, concentrate, don't let your attention go away. Kirtanam, in Vaishnava tradition, Nama Sankirtanam is a very important thing. That's why you talk about, you sing Vishnu Sahasranamam, okay? Smaranam, remembering. Padasevanam, serving the feet. As you all know, Padaka Pattabhishekam is a very important part of Ramayana. Archanam, offering worship with the 16 paraphernalia. Vandanam is offering prayers. Dasyam is like the volunteers of the temple, serving the Lord without expecting anything in return. And at the same time, Atma Nivedanam, that's a very important thing. Surrendering yourself, your soul completely to the Lord. These are the 9 forms of bhakti. And that is the most important takeaway point from Prahlada Charitra. And of course, after hearing this, Hiranyakashipu became enraged. Prahlada would not renounce Lord Vishnu, and he tried to kill him. Finally, he came out of the pillar and slayed Narasimha. Now we are going to go slightly deeper into the Bhagavatam. And this is a part called Uddhava Gita. Has anyone heard of that? Okay. Uddhava is not a name that is mentioned in Mahabharata. He was a relative and a kinsman of Lord Krishna. At the end of Lord Krishna's time in the world, Brahma and the other gods came. And then they said, now this is time, you have done what your avatar is meant to do, and it is time for you to come back to heaven. And Krishna agreed to it. And his nephew and close friend Uddhava came to Krishna and said, you are going to leave us, I am so sad, give me your teachings. And so Krishna took him through all the forms of bhakti. He told him about social order, he told him about vairagya or renunciation, and imparted a lot of teachings to Krishna at that stage, and this is known as Uddhava Gita. So everyone's time for passing is a very important time. Our perspective of life and society and everything changes then. So it is a very interesting part. And what we are going to look at is something called Avaduta Upakyanam. So Avaduta is a wandering sage, someone who is kind of like a wandering mendicant. And so we see Sukabrahmam telling Parikshit the Bhagavatam, and inside the Bhagavatam there is Krishna talking to Uddhava, and within that you find the conversation between King Yadu, one of Krishna's ancestors, and this Avaduta, or this kind of wandering mendicant. So Avaduta is someone who is just going around aimlessly. He doesn't care about his clothes, his appearance, whatever. He is of this world, but yet detached from it. And so now King Yadu was very surprised by him. As he came across him in the forest, he said, look, I am living in this life of fear, tension, anxiety. Everyone is trying to do something for material gain, influencing someone else. We are all running around trying to do so many things, and nothing seems to make a meaning. And yet here you are, looking so carefree. There is no signs of tension in your face, and you know what you look like? The forest is burning with a huge fire. There is a big forest fire raging, and yet you are peaceful like the elephant that is in the middle of the Ganges. You know that the fire is burning all around, yet you are secure in the knowledge the fire cannot reach you. You look, how is this possible for you? One of the things is our sages and rishis spent a lot of time in nature. They took in nature, they observed nature, they respected nature, and they preserved nature. That's a very important lesson. And so the Avaduta told him, I have 24 gurus, and I have learned from all of them. And these are the gurus. Very interesting observation. Prithvi, Vayur, Akasam, Apaha, Agnischandrama, Ravihi, Kapoto, Ajagaraha, Sindhuhu, Patango, Madhukratu, Gajaha, Madhuha, Harino, Meenaha, Pingala, Kuraro, Arbakaha, Kumari, Sarakratu, Sarpa, Urnanabihi, Supeshakratu. Ete me Guravo Rajan, Chatur Vimsatir Ashritaha, Siksha Vrittibir Etesham, Anvasiksham Iha Atmanaha. So what are these 24 gurus that he talked about? He didn't talk about gods, he didn't talk about rishis or teachers. So we are going to look at these very quickly for want of time. It is quite an interesting, so I hope that, my talk encourages you to go back and read our scriptures because there is so much wealth of knowledge in them. The first guru is Prithvi, the earth. The earth is always patient. No matter whether you dig, you blast it, whatever, the earth is always patient. It has a lot of forbearance. And mountains and trees, which are part of earth, exist selflessly for others. That is what I learned from Prithvi. Vayuhu, air. The wind moves about everywhere. It takes in all kinds of aromas and everything, yet it is attached to none. So I learned detachment from Vayuhu. Sky, Akasam. It is there everywhere, and it encompasses everything, just like the Paramatma encompasses everything. That is what I learned from Akasam. Apaha, water, it cleanses. A good person is like water, and he cleanses everyone who touches it. Fire, it consumes everything that is offered. A sannyasi should consume whatever is offered to him, and it takes the form of whatever it is generated from. You put in a small matchstick, the light is going to be small. You use a big yajna's thing, then that's going to be big. It takes whatever form it is generated from. Chandramaha, moon. You see, the moon waxes and wanes. But does the moon become small or big? No, it is only our observation. And it is the same with our body. I am young one day, middle-aged the other day, old the other day. It is the body that changes, not the Atma. That's what I learned. Ravihi, he made a very good physical observation and said, the sun takes in the water and gives it back as rain, and so does the sannyasi. He takes what he needs and then he gives back when the person who has lent it asks for him back. Sindhuhu, ocean, it's about equanimity. When there is a flood, more water comes in through the rivers. When there is a dry season, the rivers dry up, but the ocean is not perturbed. It is there, it exists all the time. And same is with life. Some days you have good days and some days you have bad days, but life goes on. So you must be calm like the ocean and not get disturbed. And then he talked about different things. He talked about the bee that collects honey and only collects honey as much as it needs. And he talked about not giving in to senses. The elephant gets caught in a trap because it gives in to the sense of touch. The deer gets caught, harini, and that gets caught because it gives in to the sense of sound and music. That's how the hunter captures it. And he then talks about Arbakaha, the child. The child is all innocent, okay, and it has no tension. So be like the child if you want to get through life. Kumari, he talks about the young woman who is kind of, it's a bit difficult to explain. In Tamil, we say muram and rice, like you've got a flat kind of a palm leaf thing, and then you have rice there, and you try to separate the rice from the husk by kind of, throwing it up repeatedly. And this young girl had a lot of bangles in her hand, and they made a lot of noise. Then she took away everything and just had two, and they still made some noise. Finally, she took those two and just had one bangle in each arm. And she said, when you move with a lot of people, there could be lots of noise, gossip, unwanted things. Try and be on your own as much as possible, and so that'll reduce all the distraction. Sarakriti, the arrow maker. There was an arrow maker who was so engaged in his trade, he didn't even look at the king passing by. And such should be your concentration in the Lord. So you should be single-minded in your devotion to the Lord and not let your attention move around. Sarpa, the snake never stays in one place. It always goes and takes up residence in another. A sannyasi should be like that. You stay in one place, you'll get used to it, and then you degenerate. So you have the sannyasi should keep on moving. Supesha Kritu, the wasp. And what happens is the wasp captures a worm, it brings in, the worm is scared of the wasp, it concentrates and concentrates on the wasp, and then it transforms into a wasp. And so should you be. You should think about the Lord all the time so you become as close to Bhagavan as possible. So these are the, and then finally he said, even my body is a teacher, King Yadu. I know that the body is healthy one day, then it becomes diseased, and I know that it will die, perish, and then it is gone. And I learned about detachment from my body. So these, I've taken you through it very quickly, and I've not explained all of it. These are the 24 gurus that I have learned my enlightenment from. The most important thing is, he didn't kind of, name any big teacher like Vyasa or Valmiki or Yajnavalkya or whatever, or he didn't say, I read 1,000 books to get to the state. The teaching for us is, look around you. Everything and everyone can teach us something. That is the most important thing. And the beauty is the observance of nature. These days we are always tied to some electronic device or not. I'm guilty as well. We don't kind of, look around and see what is around us. We don't spend time with nature. We don't respect it. And this is something that we need to learn from our great ancestors. And now we come to, then Parikshit asked, what are the do's and don'ts for the grihastha? And Sukha said, Ahimsa satyam asteyam, akama krodha lobata, bhuta priya hiteha cha, dharmo yam sarva varnikaha. Ahimsa, non-violence. Satyam, truthfulness. Asteyam, honesty. Practice non-violence, be truthful, and be honest. This is what you need to do. What to avoid? Kama, krodha, lobata. Avoid lust, anger, and greed. That's what you need to do. And love all beings. Bhuta priya hitehacha. So love all beings. That is what you need to do as a grihastha. And I'll just mention just one thing about Krishna and Rukmini's wedding. So Rukmini was actually in the kingdom of Vidarbha, Krishna was in Mathura, and Rukmini had never seen Krishna. But she had heard so much about him, she fell in love with him blindly. And when the time for marriage came, her brother wanted to, Rukmi wanted to marry her to Shishupala. But Rukmini's mind was set on Krishna. And what she did is she called a messenger and sent a message to Lord Krishna through the messenger, and she wrote 7 shlokas. And this is a very beautiful one. Shrutva gunan bhuvana sundara shrunvatam te nirvishya karna varairir haratongatabam rupam drisham drishimatam akilat labam tvai achyuta avashati chittam apatra pramme. O Krishna, I have heard your qualities, and even listening to your qualities lets me imagine how beautiful you are. I know that you take away the pain from anyone who hears about you. And for anyone who can see, just seeing you gives them all the visual delight they can ever have. And so the messenger took the message to Krishna, then he came, he abducted Rukmini and had a battle with Rukmi, and all of that happened. So this is just a very brief touch on Krishna. So 7 days went by, and at the end of the 7 days, Shuka told Parikshit, after all the teachings, he told him, Aham Brahma Param Dharma, Brahmaham Paramam Padam, Evam Samikshya Chatmanam, Atmani Addaye Nishkale, Dashantam Takshakam Pade, Lelihanam Vishanainaha, Na Drashkeshi Shariram Cha, Vishwam Cha Pratag Atmanaha. After having listened to all of this, by now you know that you and the Parabrahman, the absolute truth, are not different. And you have the abode, the Vaikundam in your heart. That is where you belong. Once you get this realization and you know the material world is false and the spiritual world is true and where you belong, you will not even notice the snake coming, licking your feet, biting you and your life leaving you. And that is what Shukam told him finally, that Aham Brahmam Param Dhamma, Brahm Aham Paramam Padam. You belong at the Lord's feet, and this is the realization that is going to protect you from everything. And Parikshit replied, Anyanam cha nirastam me, jnana vinyana nistaya, bhavata darshitam shemam, param bhagavataha padam. You have revealed to me that which is most auspicious, the personal supreme feature of the Lord. I am now fixed in knowledge and realization, jnana vinyana nistaya, and my ignorance has been eradicated. So he thanked Sukha Brahmam and took permission from Sukha Brahmam to say, now I have no worries, I have no fear, no anxiety. I am going to withdraw all my senses and am going to enter the Prayobhavesa Nilai, or the Prayobhavesa state. And so he closed his eyes, shut his senses to everything around him, and went into deep meditation. Takshaka took the form of a Brahmin to make his way through the crowd. He came straight to the king. He bit the king. The poison was so potent, the king's body was burnt to ashes. But you know what? Parikshit died in peace. He knew he was going to reach the Lord's abode. He died in peace. And this is the whole, I've given you Bhagavatam in a nutshell. And, the points that, the kind of lessons I want you to take away is, especially for the children, is the uniqueness of the spirituality and the mindset of our scriptures. You should know that nothing, no position, no material wealth is permanent. That is the first thing. And once you have that realization, you will treat everyone equally, see everyone equally. And our forefathers did not seek wealth. The rishis, the wisdom was all about seeking truth, even at the point of death. Second, avoid anger and don't act in impulse. That is what got Parikshit into trouble, and that is what caused the rishi's son a lot of grief. He was responsible for the king's death. And never act impulsively. As one of my friends used to say, someone sends an angry email in office, he would say, respond, don't react. And we never know what the other person's circumstances are. He didn't know what the rishi's circumstances are, and he got angry with him. Life should be defined by non-violence, truthfulness, and honesty, and what we need to avoid is lust, anger, and greed. And I've told you about the 9 forms of bhakti, and the most important one is Shravanam. Try, and even if you can't read a scripture, there are so many resources these days, especially YouTube, whatever. Try and at least listen to good things. That's really important. And the final thing I want to say is just one word, tapaha. That is the first word of the first greatest epic. Ramayana starts with tapaha. The first word Brahma heard was tapaha, which means to meditate and contemplate. So we should not just read things and go. Try and think over it later in the day when you have a free time, and then more truths will be revealed. Like when you see a diamond, you look closer into it, more and more facets will be revealed. It's like that, tapaha, meditate, very important point of Indian culture. And with that, we have almost come to the conclusion of the talk. I know everyone is hungry. I'll just tell this final shloka. Srimad Bhagavatham Puranam Amalam Yad Vaishnavam Priyam Yasmin Paramahamsyam Ekam Amalam Jnanam Param Giyate Tatra Jnana Viraga Bhakti Sahitam Nasi Karmyam Avishkratam Tachravan Supathan Vicharana Paro Bhaktya Vimuchen Naraha. Srimad Bhagavatham delivers everyone from evil and brings a lot of goodness to those who hear, chant, and make someone tell them. So I must say Bhaskar Garu got himself a lot of punya by asking me to give this talk, and I wish to thank Bhaskar Garu, the temple committee, and all of you devotees for giving me a patient hearing, and to Veda Vyasa, who first recited the Bhagavatam, to Shukha Brahmam, who brought it to us, and all the rishis and sages of our great holy land Bharat. Thank you very much.